Protagonistas del comic.
Buenas noches, gente, buenas noches. Acá en otro episodio de Protagonistas del Cómic, en nuestro episodio número 42. 42 protagonistas del cómic y nos quedan 8 para llegar a los 50. Voy a presentar obviamente a mi compañero de entrevistas que no puede faltar porque es otro de los grandes fundadores acá de Protagonistas del Cómic, el señor Mario Luzuriaga.
¿Cómo estás, Kyle? Yo estoy muy nervioso, tengo muchas ganas de hablar con esta persona porque nos ha marcado la vida, nos han marcado la vida esta gente, así que estoy muy feliz y vamos a darle con todo.
Bueno, a partir de ahora vamos a hablar en inglés. Acá arriba les voy a dejar la tarjeta donde ustedes pueden, les explico cómo poner los subtítulos en forma automática para que los traduzcan y puedan ver la entrevista en vivo tanto en YouTube desde la computadora como desde su celular. Pero vamos a hablar en inglés ahora. From now on, we're going to speak in English. We're going to introduce our guest. I think it's one of the greatest Superman editors of all time.
Yes, sir.
We have fond memories of his era with an all-star team in Superman. The one and only Mike Carlin, sir.
Good
Hello.
evening. Yes.
How you doing, sir?
So far, so good. Thanks for having me.
No,
I'm
thank
glad-
you, thanks to you, sir.
I'm glad you
Thanks
switched to English.
Thanks to you, sir, because you are a legend for us and for all our audience. So thank you so much to give us this interview.
Well, since I retired from DC Comics, I don't have anything else to do anyway, so I might as well be here.
You know, sir, for us, it's incredible how you manage to build such an incredible all-star team for the Superman books, and for us, it's one of our jump-on points to read Superman. We start reading with the 90s Superman, especially with the death of Superman, and I haven't seen any other editor worked like you did. So it's a great honor to have you here.
Well, we were all just working to make Superman look good, and I don't think I was necessarily considered the greatest editor of comics. I don't think any of the people who worked on them were superstars at the time. I think, if anything, the team became more famous from working on Superman, and I think, and because they did such a great job on Superman, basically, I think, Superman is a pretty important character. We felt a little, not a lot, but a little pressure to do right by him. And I think we didn't drop the ball. I think everybody rose to the occasion. I don't think we really had anybody who wasn't carrying their part of the deal. And we did I think we did do a good job. If everybody else out there says that we did a good job, then I'd have to agree with them.
Sir, you're the editor. You're the editor of our life. But that, for me, for Kyle, and for a big generation here nowadays in Argentina, because we grew up, not grew up. We start learning reading because of your books, sir.
Oh,
so
that's
for us, just for me, it's an honor to talk with you, sir. I always remember when my father, when we went in the summer on the beach, my father bought me one of the magazines. And what was that magazine? Death of Superman. So it's incredible for me, sir, to talk with you. So thank you so much to you because you edited one of the greatest stories of Superman.
Well, it was fun to work on, and honestly, at the same time, we were doing it. You know, if we were the first people who did a Death of Superman story, we might have been more nervous about it. But it really was just our version of a classic story. You know, we would do that a lot. You know, you get to see, you know, once John Byrne came in and revamped the Superman book from the start, we figured it was a chance to let everybody in on the ground floor. You know, you could see the first appearance of Mr. Mxyzptlk again. You wouldn't have to go back and spend a lot of money to find a first appearance or whatever. If you like that character, you could see him from the start, and you could see him, you know, become what he was for Superman. Same with Brainiac. Even if you didn't like what we did at the beginning, you saw that eventually we turned him into what you would expect Brainiac to be. And the Death of Superman was us letting you in on the ground floor of a classic story, the same as Superman Blue and Superman Red was our attempt at that as well. You know, so it was just like it was our job to try to remind people about the fun stuff that had been done with Superman and could be done with Superman.
And you begin your
Mr.
career
Carlin, I want to ask you a question.
You begin your career in Marvel.
Well, technically, kind of not really. I started as an intern at DC when I was in high school. I got to be a high school intern at DC, and my desk in the hallway was right outside of Julie Schwartz's office, so I could hear them plotting Superman comics when I was in high school. So I was around the office. You know, Carmine Infantino was the boss. He would come walking by, smoking his giant cigars, and I figure that was what anointed me as a DC guy, pretty officially. The other thing is that my mother was a big comic book fan. She loved Superman and Wonder Woman. She didn't care about Batman much, but I had my own TV show to get me into that. And you know, she was a big EC Comics fan. She loved the horror comics, but she didn't really know much about Marvel. That said, once I finished college, I finished high school. I went to college where I studied with Will Eisner and Harvey Kurtzman, so that was pretty good too. That opened a door at Marvel for their humor magazine because I wanted to draw superhero comics, but I'm not good enough.
Yeah.
But I was good enough to do humorous stuff, and I started working on Crazy Magazine, which was Marvel's version of Mad Magazine. And then just being around Marvel's offices, and they knew that I read superhero comics. They said, "Do you want to be an assistant editor?" And I said, "Yeah, what's that?" I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what they did. Then I did that for a couple of years, and it was fun.
Sorry about my delay. First of all, sorry about my delay. But I want to ask you about the early days on Marvel, on your work, on editing something. Do you remember which title was the biggest in that era?
Well, X-Men was the biggest title at Marvel. X-Men was the biggest title at Marvel for a lot of years. But the biggest one I worked on was the Fantastic Four with John Byrne. So that's a direct connection to me working on Superman with John Byrne.
And that when you jump on the Superman titles, right after, before he left the Superman books, or when he was on Superman?
My first credit on Superman is on Superman number 4. So it was right after the Man of Steel miniseries happened. And then I came in pretty early on the run of all the Superman books. I was there for another, year and a half to 2 years with John Byrne. And again, we had a good relationship at Marvel, and it was part of why DC picked me up when Marvel threw me out. And he said that he liked working with me, and his editor at the time, Andy Helfer, was moving over to do the Justice League International book, and that obviously became a big deal for DC as well. So it was important to have him focus on that. And then and John and I worked together on Superman. And I would be lying if I didn't say that John, I don't really feel like I became the editor of Superman until when John left, because John was there first. And John had his finger on the pulse of something that I couldn't guarantee. And he was such a big deal in the 80s that I wouldn't have really messed with anything much. But honestly, the minute he left is when I feel like me and Jerry Ordway and Roger Stern stepped up to the plate, and we definitely made it our own. And that was kind of when the book started linking more tightly together. And then I came up with the triangle numbers to try to keep it straight for myself. I couldn't keep track of where things fell. Or if I needed to look back on something, it was just easier to find, with those numbers on the covers. It was just tougher to see where stuff fit together. There wasn't as many collected editions at the time. So it was definitely everything evolved. The whole process evolved. And honestly, I think we created a little bit of a monster by tying them together so tightly, because we were hamstrung for a lot of our run.
Yeah, indeed, there are a lot of pictures with those amazing long charts, and you writing on them, pointing some plots.
Yep.
It looked like you were all working with some coherence between the stories and continuity. You put a lot of them on it.
Well, I think one of the things that we did right was we did have everybody in the room. There was nothing would go up on the chart unless everybody just felt that it was a good idea or good enough idea that they'd want to play along with. Because if they're not stoked for it, they won't do a good job. And it really was important to do that. If there was too many people who said, that's not so great or whatever, then we would hold off on something. And sometimes when an idea didn't make it to the chart, it would come back in a year or two, and we would do it then, and it would fit perfectly at a later date. So it really was important to listen to everybody and have a plan and to know where we were going. I think what we did right was we always knew what the ending of our story was going to be, and that really helped to plan out a lot of these stories.
Sir, and speaking of your team, how you put this team together? I'm going to show you a picture. How you gather this team, like the A team?
Oh, there
how you gather this team?
The A team, the S team, the S
team.
It
was the S team.
Yes. Who do we got? Well, we got Dan Jurgens is in there to the left. And Roger Stern is leaning on Clark Kent's head, and Jerry Ordway is near the front, on the right. There he is. The
Breeding
guy that's Brett Breeding. The guy behind Brett Breeding is Kerry Gamble, who I think is one of the best artists for superheroes. For any superhero, but really Superman he loved. And Ordway was obviously great. He was there before I got there as well, but he had also worked with Byrne on the Fantastic Four. He inked the Fantastic Four for a while. So that's where I met Jerry and got to know him. The guy in the front is Dennis Janke, the inker. And the guy in the green shirt that's really skinny, that's me. And the guy to his right is the colorist, Glenn Whitmore. That was the other thing that included everybody in these meetings. I wouldn't say that Glenn was contributing all of the story ideas, but he definitely was there there, so he felt connected to it, and he definitely, he worked, I think, harder because he was part of a team rather than just a guy sitting in his house by himself.
Sir,
yeah.
did you hear that story before you entered to the team? Before you entered to the team of Superman, that John Byrne's idea about bring Lara pregnant to the Earth. It was a true story. That
I never heard that, and that was never something that I was involved in. No, sorry.
That was the story I heard. That John's plan was bring Lara pregnant from Krypton and land into the Earth and dying there in the crash.
Then that way Superman could have been president of the United States if he was actually born here.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, I never heard that. That doesn't mean that it wasn't something he thought of or discussed. It may have been. But that was, again, I got there after the Man of Steel miniseries happened, and that's pretty much where everything was established.
And then, sir, you had this iconic saga that was called Exile. It's pretty iconic, and it's pretty well remembered by Superman fans. And actually, it was maybe it was used recently in Action Comics with Philip Kennedy Johnson, with Mongol and World and all this. But there was a saga later that really I really loved, that it was Panic in the Sky.
And yeah, that was our way to introduce the Mongol and World concept, which was a lot of fun. I mean, the reason we did the Exile story was really because when John Byrne left, Roger Stern kind of came in and worked with Jerry Ordway, and we were tying the books together a lot. But we mostly were left by John with a story where he had Superman kill the Kryptonian villains, the General Zod, and that was all fine. It's Superman is definitely a guy who doesn't like to kill and shouldn't kill. But we felt like this is our chance to really show that there's ramifications from that, and that that he had a lot of, mental problems because he did something really wrong, and he knew he did something really wrong. So he had to work that out. And we were lucky that we had the space and time to do it over the course of a year or two to explore what would happen. I mean, he ended up with split personalities. He exiled himself from the planet, and then he got to see a lot of the rest of the universe, which also brought him towards people like Mongol and World and things like that. So it was a lot of fun for us to keep building one thing on top of another so that they would all kind of go together. Now, at that time, we only had 2 books a month, because when Byrne left, he was able to do 2 books himself, and then we had a 3rd book with Jerry Ordway doing it. But we only had the 2 books, and Roger and Jerry did a great job. And it was, it was still, 24 books, 24 books a year. So that it was a lot of work. And we slowly got people into the habit of trying to be there every week for Superman comics. And it was building slowly. It was definitely not one of DC's top sellers right off the bat, but it definitely was getting good word of mouth. And then when Dan Jurgens joined the group, he was a DC mainstay at that point because he had done a bunch of comics for DC and then created Booster Gold for them. So he was a good DC team player already, and even Booster Gold used a lot of DC continuity, so he was a guy who knew the universe very well, and he fit in. We had him do a Superman annual with Jim Starlin first, and the art was fine, and he looked great, and then he had a lot of ideas, and he just fit right in with the group, and once we had established the idea that all the books would tie together, if you joined our group, you knew the deal was that it wasn't about you. It was about Superman. It was always going to be not about Roger Stern, not about Dan Jurgens, not about Jerry Ordway. It was going to be about Superman and building him up and making him look great. And everybody agreed with that plan. So they stuck with it.
And I think that was the real secret of this iconic era that I don't know if you know that most people, there's a group in Facebook called the Triangle Era that that are all fans of that era of the 80s and 90s.
I promoted this appearance today on that page. So they might be watching now.
and it was a special era, I think, because of that, because of the bond between the comic book creators in the team, and especially as you said, Superman wasn't selling good, and
well, he was doing okay. When John Byrne came on, he did really well, and it was just a question of we didn't want to lose any of that momentum when he left, and it definitely was not a top seller at the time compared to the X-Men and whatnot at Marvel. So it was our mission to try to really make Superman look good, and to remind people that Superman was a valuable character and not just old news or corny or old-fashioned. And that was a big part of the death of Superman. It was our feeling that people were taking Superman for granted, and we basically said, let's take Superman away and see what they think. Yeah, that looks more like me now.
But sir, the road to the death of Superman was amazing. I know that in those days it was not they're bad on sales, but it's amazing. You created the whole team.
We started getting critical attention, which was very helpful. People were noticing the book. People weren't saying it was a junky book or it sold badly because it was bad. It didn't really sell badly. It just didn't sell as good as it should be. We all felt that Superman should be the first and foremost character on people's mind. And we took that very seriously. And eventually, Paul Levitz, who was my boss, along with Jeanette Kahn and Dick Giordano, he just kept asking me, when am I going to get a fourth Superman book? When am I going to get a fourth Superman book? And that was when I once again looked to my old cronies at Marvel Comics, and I got Louise Simonson to come over with John Bogdanove to do Man of Steel. And with John Bogdanove, it was only a matter of time because he had named his son Kal-El. Yeah. So I knew I'd get him eventually. And he's here in this picture with the Superman shirt on, and Louise is next to him. So it's like it was a good crew, and I won't say that there weren't disagreements about what we should do with Superman or directions here and there, but it was always about the characters. It was never about our personalities or anything like that, and it was never a personal fight of any kind. We all just wanted to do what we thought was best for Superman.
And sir, I have to ask you, because we asked this to everyone that we have the chance to interview from the Superman team. Who said or who had the idea to kill Superman?
Well, there's conflicting reports about that over the years. I will say that every time we had a Superman meeting, we would have some points in the meetings where they would be ideas were coming fast and furious. Then there'd be points where we would just like poop out and just slow down, and the ideas weren't coming. And every time that happened, Jerry Ordway would say, "Let's just kill him." And that would make everybody laugh. And then we'd go off and say, "Well, we'll finish this tomorrow," and we'll come back the next day, and we'd go out to dinner and have some drinks, and it would be a cool down period, and we'd come back the next day and we'd say, "All right, I thought of this last night," and then the death thing would go away. It just was a joke until the time we were building up towards Lois and Clark getting married. We had them get engaged in our story. I mean, a lot of what was getting the critical attention was that we were doing down-to-earth stories with the superhuman character. The story about him getting engaged, it was definitely a lot of soap opera stuff we were doing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, we would have some good fistfights in there too, because the artists were really great at that. But it was definitely, I also think the other thing we did well was we made Metropolis a character.
Yeah.
And we made all people who live in Metropolis matter to the story, so that when you took Superman away, Metropolis reacted to that. And that was people like Bibbo and, obviously Jimmy and Lois, and Perry, but we had Ron Troop, we had side characters like
The Guardian.
Yeah, Gangbuster, all kinds of people who would have had, and they weren't just superheroes. They were regular people, they were people who worked at the Daily Planet, Alice the copy girl and a guy named Wit who never said anything, but he was always there with the glasses on top of his head.
Cat Grant.
Everyone. We had all these characters who could react to something happening, not just the death, but any story that was going on. Perry White's son was a big part of the Blaze and Satanist wars. It's like we could always get to these people who Superman was saving. It wasn't just a faceless crowd that he was, taking care of and making sure that everybody was okay, but they were just nobodies. So we spent a lot of energy to kind of make Metropolis matter to Superman, So as we went along, we got noticed for that, and there was interest in doing a television show. There was people in Hollywood at Warner Brothers wanted to do a Lois and Clark show, and it was something that Jeanette Kahn and I put together as a Bible for what we called Lois Lane's Planet. And it was about the Daily Planet, and it was about Lois and her romance with Clark. And sometimes Superman would show up, and we made this Bible from I literally cut and pasted, because there was no computers going on back then. I cut up, color Xeroxes of the comic book pages and pasted them together in this little booklet. And we gave it to the people in Hollywood, and they were interested in doing that soap opera kind of show. And so there was interest in that. And the rumor has been for years, and I've tried to squash this as much as I can, but nobody listens. That Hollywood said, don't have them get married in the comic, come up with something else. And that's not true. They never said they didn't care what we did in the comics. They never even thought that they could say something like that. But Jeanette Kahn and I said, if this show is coming, why don't we hold off on the wedding? And if the show bombs, we can do the wedding next year. And if the show's a hit, we can just get to the wedding later and try to do it at the same time that they do it on the show, because they'll get to the wedding eventually. So it was us, and the creators were not happy because we were planning to do something else, and they wanted to get there, and they wanted to be the guys who did it. They didn't know if they would be around still on the books or whatever, and so they were kind of pissed off. And so that meeting, everybody kind of was grumpy and mad, and somebody said, let's just kill him. And it was either Jerry or Dan reprising the joke because they were mad. They were being sarcastic. And I said, okay, wise guys, if we kill him, then what? And what they came up with was the funeral for a friend stuff. And it was just like, this is what I'm talking about. This is a story. The death of Superman itself is not a story. Funeral for a friend is the story. Funeral for is what makes everybody care about Superman. There I am with the charts.
With the charts, here I got here. This is one of the part of the charts of the Superman's 75, the death of Superman, with all the annotations that you guys did. It's incredible that you guys have this continuity. I remember seeing the whole page and how all connected, how everyone was taking into account, and everything was follow continuity in order to don't mess with something that you guys did
well, we put down what mattered. It's like in the 3 issues before the death of Superman, we started with 4 panels a page in that one comic. And then we did 3 panels a page in the next comic, and then 2 panels a page in Man of Steel. And then Superman 75 was all splash pages, and we wrote that down. And you'll see that all the information is here, but it's still not a lot. So there was still room to be creative. You still had a chance to put a lot of extra stuff into things, but it was a skeleton. It was definitely the bare bones of where we were going, and everybody would know what the other guy was going to bring to the show. And the big secret was that every week, whoever sent in anything, whether it was pencil pages or a plot or scripts or lettered pages came in or inks, I would Xerox them for everybody. And everybody had a pouch in my office, and we would stuff the stuff in the pouch, and everybody on Friday would be sent a package for Saturday delivery, and they would get one while they were theoretically drinking their coffee at lunch on Saturday. They'd get to go through everything that came in, and they'd see where everybody else was, and everyone would be included. So everybody was involved. There was an element of that was kind of a healthy competition, because you could see the amazing work that people were doing, but you could also say, holy crap, Dan Jurgens drew 30 pages in a week. How am I going to do that? And then it would force the other guys to work a little harder, maybe. And it was really a great way to keep everybody on their game. Except for Jurgens, there's not a guy who worked on these books that has done as much work in a year as that year, because they really wanted to be a part of it. And also, by then we were definitely selling enough copies that the royalties made a big difference. So that was a great motivator as well.
Mr. Carlin, I'm sorry, Mr. Carlin. Doomsday always was the first choice to be the main villain on this story, or there was another one?
Nope. The main thing we discussed was it should not be Lex Luthor, and it should not be Kryptonite. It shouldn't be what everybody would expect it to be. And everybody who thought it should be that was wrong, because if it was that, it would be boring. It would be exactly what you would expect. And Doomsday was literally something that nobody ever heard of or thought of before. And he was, we called him a force of nature. He was like the embodiment of a hurricane, or an earthquake. He was definitely, something that Superman, he did go up against tsunamis and things like that. And he would have to find ways to make sure that it didn't affect the civilians. But now it had a face. And that was what Doomsday was. And we didn't know what he was going to look like. And, like I said, Dan came into the meeting wanting to do an all splash page issue. He wanted to do that and show a big fight with Superman against the big monster. So he drew up his version of Doomsday, but all the other pencilers on the books designed a monster as well. And we voted. We picked the one we liked the best, and Dan's won. Dan won fair and square, and then there were no hard feelings about it. Everybody thought his was the best monster, and he still stands the test of time. He looked good. He has served a great purpose. He did not have a real personality or anything, which was something I know Jeanette Kahn wished he had right from the start. But we felt pretty strongly that a hurricane doesn't have a personality. It doesn't mean to kill you. It just does, and it's like it's a destructive force. And that's what Doomsday was in our minds. I think we got our way, and we got it to do it the way we wanted to do it. And it made it different than every other just bad guy who shows up with a plan. There was no plan. It was just a monster on a rampage, literally a force of nature.
And as you said, it was this mystery that surrounds Doomsday that was one of the greatest things that you guys came up with, because it was something that nobody has ever seen. It was something that came out of nowhere, and we only got this fist punching the wall in a couple of issues before, and then Doomsday. And as you also said,
and the bird.
Most people remember fondly the death of Superman, but the true story is Funeral for a Friend, I think.
I think so. And then as we saw how much, like the way comics work is that there's pre-orders. People, the comic shops order a number of, how many comics they think they can sell. And there were so many people buying the death of Superman, and so many people stayed on, and they bought so many copies of Funeral for a Friend. We got a little scared because we didn't want to just have Superman, sit up in the coffin and say, "Oh, I'm better now and I'm back," because that would have been terrible. And each of the teams wanted to bring Superman back in a very different way so that people would be surprised again. We wanted to keep surprising people, because if you give the audience what it says it wants, they'll be bored. If you give them something that they didn't even know they wanted, they'll be surprised. And we want to keep surprising people. So they each came up with their own thing. Carl Kiesel, who was joining the group as Jerry Ordway left, he wanted to do Superboy. He wanted to do a young Superman so we could see what he would be like. And obviously Louise and Louise and John wanted to do, their literally John Henry Irons, a John Henry mythological type character. The Eradicator was already part of our story, and we just kind of amped him up a little bit to make it be that he still wanted to make Earth, he was there to protect the last Kryptonian. And you find out that he was a big part of why Superman was able to come back to life. And the cyborg Superman was also there before we got there. Hank Henshaw was a character that Dan Jurgens had been working on. And he was a guy who had a real hate on for Superman. And thank God we did this all when there was no internet, because we managed to actually surprise people when he turned out to be the bad guy.
Of course. And also one thing that I really enjoyed, it was that this cyborg Superman was taken from those issues from adventures when you guys did like a parody of the Fantastic Four.
Yes. Yes, he was. It was our version of the Fantastic Four, and he was Reed Richards basically. But he was turned into something else pretty quickly when he became a guy who could, meld himself with computers and metal and things like that. So he was something different right from the start. But the origin was definitely our version of that. But the real trick here was they all wanted to do something different, and I was just like, oh, I can't. How can I pick one of these when 3 of the teams will not be happy, and they'll do maybe not as good a job with this as whatever. And Louise Simonson said, why don't we do all of them? And that was like, whoa, that's it. And we got everybody together for an emergency meeting, and we planned out the whole Reign of the Superman story there. And it was just like, it really was like, that was the year we had 2 meetings, because we suddenly said, we need another meeting to fix this. We needed to make sure that we didn't drop the ball. We didn't want to, fizzle out or just do a lame ending to it. We didn't. It all went according to what we had planned. It just was spread out a little more, and it also got bigger. And it got bigger to the point where we had extra characters now in the DC universe, because Superboy and Steel went on to their own comics for 100-issue runs. And the Eradicator was in miniseries and joined the Outsiders, and Cyborg Superman is still a villain out there too. He still gets used. So it's like it just expanded. Everything became more important. But the weirdest thing for me was the day we had this meeting, we were in a hotel, and I went to my hotel room when the meeting was over, and I turned on the news, and the reporters were saying that DC was having a secret meeting to bring back Superman. And acting like we were listening to the fans and bringing back Superman because they were mad that we killed him. And I was like, well, we did have a meeting, but that's not exactly what we were doing. It was weird. We were the news at that time, and nothing like that has happened in comics since then. And it's pretty unusual. And it was definitely really fun to be a part of that.
It was,
Mr. Carlin, we have
you guys should hold up.
We have
I have to do this, bro.
It's my delay problem. Sorry, my internet connection. Sir, we here in Argentina, we all met this character. I saw for the first time all the characters, like for an album of stickers, a trading card album. So
yes.
It was here in Argentina, was published. This the only thing, and they published for the first time all these characters: Cyborg Superman, the Eradicator, Superboy, everyone, and we love it because here in the country we have all the comic books in that time didn't came to the news post. So we can't afford it. We can get the comic books. So with this sticker album, with trading card album, I met all those characters. And I want to ask you this question: who was your favorite of these 4 characters?
My favorite is Superman. That's the answer. Me and Bibbo have the same favorite.
I'm gonna improve the question: long hair or short hair?
Here's where I'm gonna get all mad at everybody. If all you care about is whether Superman has trunks on or if his hair is long, then you don't really care about Superman. You're not reading the stories. It doesn't matter. And in real life, some days I have long hair, some days I have short hair, and it doesn't change who I am. It has nothing to do with anything. I don't act differently. I don't do anything differently. So for us, we did it for a reason. It was maybe a dumb reason, because in the pilot for Lois and Clark, Dean Cain's hair was a little longer, and we said, let's make his hair a little longer when he came back. We also made the blue of his suit darker, which most people didn't even notice when he came back to life. It was a little darker, deeper blue. And we just said, we just need some small things to show that something's different. The other thing you get with long hair, like a cape, capes are dumb. Nobody should be wearing a cape. In the business that they're in, they're flying and punching, and people are tugging on your cape and all that stuff. It's just like in a visual medium where the visuals are stagnant and static, it's a way to show movement. And longer hair blowing in the breeze shows a little more movement than if it's just hair helmet. And it was definitely something for us. Now, we also had 4 different artists, and some of them liked drawing his hair really longer. Some of them liked a little shorter long hair. Some of them thought ponytails were a good idea. I was not a fan of ponytails, but they were there. You got to let everybody have their thing.
John Bogdan was one of the ponytails.
Yeah, he was a ponytail guy.
He loved it.
Yep. And that, you know what? And so what? And that was fine. And I always go back to the idea that, nobody died because he had a ponytail for a couple of stories. I don't personally like the look of a ponytail. I've never worn a ponytail. You guys might have ponytails right now. I don't know. And it wouldn't change the fact, we could have had Superman in the cap. Well, you didn't do that.
Indeed. He's also a journalist, so maybe.
Well, and we don't know how you're wearing your underwear right now. It could be on the outside. I don't know. And it doesn't matter.
This is my blue shirt, so.
So my feelings about that stuff was always like, if that's really all you care about, then you're not really into the stories. And we cared about the stories. We just always cared about the stories. My personal feeling is I like the trunks on the outside better, personally. And we've gone back to that in the comics, because even if it goes away in a movie or even in the comics for a little while, Superman, it always comes back. It's the illusion of change, as they say. And things always come back, or they can always come back. So to get crazy bent out of shape because somebody's pants are gone, I don't know why people spend energy on that kind of stuff. You should be mad if he's doing something stupid in the story.
Yeah, actually, when some comic book characters dies, everyone knows that it's gonna come back. But I think the important thing it's all the journey, how it comes back.
Right.
And that was the fun stuff about the death of Superman. How you guys built the death, the funeral for a friend, showing the world without a Superman.
Yeah.
And the final act with all these
wannabes.
Yeah. Wannabes that I really love Connell. I really love Connell.
Yeah, I like him too. I think he's a great character. And ultimately, to me, it was just like we did know he was going to come back. That's why, every time a reporter interviewed me, they were like, "How could you do this?" I'm like, "Because I know the ending, so I'm not worried about this."
Of course.
And I'm not going to put myself out of work. So I definitely, I understand why I'm glad everybody was worried, because most of the time they didn't care what we were doing. And we did it. We stuck by our guns. And sometimes characters do die for a long time and then they come back eventually. But that's okay. We're dealing with mythological level ideas and mythological characters. And people who can fly may have an ability to come back with some, if the conditions are exactly right, because that's the part that makes this supernatural and makes it superhuman, you know. And it's kind of fun to have that as a way back. And again, you just want to do the illusion of change. You want to bring people the adventure. How can he come out of this? How can he overcome death? And we found our way to do that, and it was either satisfying for you or it wasn't. But if you're a paying customer, you have bought the right to like it or hate it, and then you can complain about it. But all the people who complain about things before they happen or without having read them or seen a movie or TV show, I don't get that. I don't get why you think you have the right to have an opinion unless you're paying.
Of course. And 30 years from that moment, still a hit.
Oh, yeah.
Superman, The Return, The Funeral for a Friend, with multiple reprints, collected editions, omnibus. Did you guys ever thought that it would be like this?
No, I mean, we honestly, we worked in an era where comics were disposable, comics were not, some obviously collectors, and myself, I was somebody who kept my comics from when I was a kid. But that was not what most people did. And, I feel bad that a lot of people bought into the idea that if I buy The Death of Superman, I'll be able to put my kid through college because it's going to be valuable. It's like, if you understand how valuable back issues work, it's the ones that people don't think are going to have any value that are surprises. If everybody on Earth buys The Death of Superman and saves it, it's not going to be valuable because everyone who has it doesn't want it. And everyone who wants it probably has it. It's Wolverine's first appearance that nobody knew would matter to the world. So that's a valuable comic book,
Yeah, but also, as I always say, I think the comic books, speaking of comics, it could be anything. The value is set by one.
Yeah.
One sets the value of the comic book, and for me and Mario, Death of Superman and other issues, I got one sign from you. I didn't met you, but I got this one.
That's a good one. That's me.
Sign from you.
I hope
so
that you came to Argentina and signed my old stories of Superman.
Well, somebody has to invite me and pay for my airfare and hotel.
Yeah.
And my wife.
Of course. Why not?
Pues sí, Eduardo.
But yeah, I mean, we have no rules about that kind of stuff, and I'm happy to sign anything anybody wants. That's easy. The signatures are easy. And I pretty much know that all the guys who worked on these books are, they go to a lot of conventions and they definitely do a lot of signings. So it's easy to find this.
And you mentioned Lois and Clark, and you get a cameo on the series.
Not just me, but it was all of the writers and artists. We were all there together. We were all in that scene together. Yeah, there's Dan Jurgens right next to me. And the guy with the glasses, the sunglasses behind me is Glenn Whitmore, the colorist. Right? I think Denny Rodier was next to him, but not in this shot. But yeah, that was us on the set of Lois and Clark.
Dan is John.
We got, well, and Kal-El is in this, sitting on John's shoulders in some scenes. And Louise is there, and Jerry Ordway is there, and it was a lot of fun. It was definitely fun.
And how you got invited? You got invited to the opening. You got invited by the producers.
we were going to San Diego as a group that year, and obviously the books were very popular that year, and this was right before the Reign of the Superman was going that summer, and really we were the biggest thing going in comics at that point. So we were all going to San Diego, and we were working with the producers of Lois and Clark. So Jeanette and I arranged a meeting with the writers and all of the artists and writers of our comics. So the writers of the show, we all had a meeting one day in LA. We all got to go to the Warner Brothers lot, and we shot. We got to be extras in that scene. We went in a little early for that, and that was a lot of fun. And then we drove down. We rented 2 vans, and we drove down to San Diego from LA. And it was a real. It was a family vacation. It was just like a National Lampoon movie. And we just it was a lot of fun. It was and part of that trip, which was a great thing. And I don't know if you want to look for a picture of this on my Facebook page, but we all went out to dinner with Jerry Siegel, one of the creators of Superman, in LA that trip. So we went to Lois and Clark, we were extras, and then we had a big dinner with Jerry Siegel. So everybody got to meet the guy who started it all. And he told me that he recognized all the artists and guys because they were all on what was that called? It was they were selling their autographed comics on TV. I forget what it was called now. But anyway, everybody was doing it back then. And he saw them on that, so he knew them. And he also said, I realize you have to shake it up every now and then. And he goes, I get why you guys had to do this, and I think it's great. And he loved that Superman was getting that much attention. And that really made me feel good. If you said the opposite of that, I would have really felt
it was like a blessing.
It was a blessing from the boss.
Yeah, of course. Of course.
And sorry, Mr. Carlin, he was a really nice man, Mr. Siegel.
Yeah. And then he slapped me. No. He was a great guy, and his wife Joanne was great. And it was really a great dinner, and everybody got to talk to him and spend time with him, and it really was tremendous. It was a great thing, and Jeanette arranged that. That was all her doing, and it was just tremendous.
I'm raising my hand. Sorry, because you told me raise your hand. I'm raising my hand. This story. We passed 30 years. This story is still enjoyable. And it has many fans here in Argentina. If you come to Argentina once, you will be thrilled because the fans loved you, loved the team, loved the story. Because as I said when start the interview, you arrive in a certain point on our lives that it's amazing. It's for us, it's a treasure, it's a gift.
Well,
so
timing is everything, I have to say.
Thank you.
So that I feel lucky. I feel lucky that I got to work on Superman when my mother was such a big fan of Superman. That who gets to do that? But I was born at the right time. I was reading the Superman comics in the 60s and the 70s. And then by the 80s, the people who were the editors before me and Andy Helfer and Karen Berger, who are all exactly the same age, all the older editors were retiring and they were leaving staff. And it was just, again, it was timing. It was all timing. And we happened to be there at the right time. And we were encouraged by our bosses to do something unusual, do something special, do stuff that we hadn't seen before. And it really was a great time to be working at DC. And I think it gave us a lot of, obviously Karen created the Vertigo line of comics, and Andy gave us the funny Justice League books with Keith Giffen. And it just was like a great time to be working at DC.
And after the death of Superman, another great event that I loved, 0 Hour, there was something that I think not most people know about you, that I heard that you were responsible for the Marvel versus DC crossover.
Well, I was involved in it. I wasn't necessarily responsible for it, but I was my boss, Paul Levitz, and the head of Marvel at the time were at some kind of a meeting or a party or something, and they were like, "We got to do something to shake up the business again." Yeah, there's me and Mark Grunwald, and they all knew that I was friends with Mark Grunwald, and he was one of the head guys at Marvel, and I was one of the head guys at DC. So we basically were tapped to put together this story, and working with Dan Jurgens and Ron Mars, we had a meeting at Mark Grunwald's house, and we figured this whole story out. And the best part of this story was coming up with the idea of doing the amalgam comics, which for 1 week had our characters mushing together and blending together and becoming all new characters. And they were the amalgam comics. And we created a whole comic company to go for that. And then our bosses approved that right away because it was a fun idea. It was something that had never been done before. But this was also an example of, when the death of Superman happened, everybody accused us of like, oh, it's just hype. And that's why they're doing it, to sell comics. It's like, by the way, that's our job. Our job is to sell comics.
Of course.
Trying to do that, right? But there was no press conference or any of that kind of stuff. It just kind of grew on its own. But when we did Marvel versus DC, we had press conferences and we did things to try to get people interested. And it was a big hit, but it wasn't a Death of Superman level hit because you can't manufacture that. It just had to happen by itself. And it really was fun to work with Mark Grunwald on this project. And I don't, as you know, I assume you know that he passed away right after this happened, this series, at a very young age. He was like 43 or 44. And it was like, what a great thing to have that last time together, to work together again. And it was definitely great. And I loved it. And I was happy that our amalgam editor, M.M. Carwald, was nominated for an Eisner, and that made me happy. And we didn't win, and that made me sad, but at least we were together again for the last time.
And you were speaking about your friendship with Mark Grunwald. Can you tell us about this, sir? What can you tell us about this? What is this? Most people
what is
not
this?
know what it is.
This was we did a cable TV comedy show, 8 weeks, a half hour a week, and it was Mark Grunwald, seen on the left there, with Elliot Brown in the middle and skinny Mike Carlin on the right. And we just did a comedy show with short skits, short bits. And that was shot in my living room, which I swear when I rented that apartment, it had a plaid wall. The wall was painted that way when I moved in. And it was just like, I love this house. I love this wall. And we shot our TV show there. So it was a lot of fun. It was definitely fun. And we didn't make any money on it. It cost us money. That was a good skit. This was, I was the host of this show where I was interviewing people from different decades. And the guy sitting on the arm of the couch is Jack Morelli. He's a letterer. He was from the 50s. The guy next to him was Mike Higgins, who was my assistant editor at the time, and he was a guy from the 60s. Next to him was a guy from the 70s. That's Bob Harris, who was in charge of Marvel for years, and then came to DC and was working at DC again as well. And next to him is Howard Mackey, who is Mark's assistant and has been a writer since then. And the naked guy is Mark Grunwald. He was the guy from the future. That was so we had Howard Mackey was the guy from the 80s, and then Mark was the guy from some untold future. And that's apparently what we are still going to look like someday. I don't know. I hope not. I hope I'm gone by then.
The cool stuff about this is that it was this show. It was like I said. I told you outside air. It was a show like Kids in the Hall.
It's not funny as Kids in the Hall.
It had there are some sketches that were funny. There I think the end of the first episode when you and Mark fight and he throws you outside the window.
Yep.
And it was
we
like
did that.
this doll falling.
That was outside of our office window in Manhattan, and I stood at one end of the street and kept the cars from coming down the street so we could shoot that. If the cops came along, we would have gotten in trouble, but it was definitely a lot of fun. And dummies are always funny. If you throw a dummy out a window, it's always funny.
There's also you have also guest stars like Howard Mackey. There was one with John Byrne.
John Byrne was a guest star on Cheap Laughs. So yeah, if you work hard, you can probably find that on the internet.
There were for people, if people wants to enjoy this show, they have Elliot Brown uploaded in his YouTube channel 4 episodes. I think I watched the 2 of them.
8, so that's half of the run right there.
Oh, only 8 episodes.
Only 8 episodes. But it was hard, and we had day jobs at a comic book company, and we were doing the handbook for the Marvel Universe at the time, which was a lot of work. That was more work than a regular comic book, and it definitely was. We were the 3 guys putting that together every month. So it was. This was really just us blowing off steam. Was working on this show.
It's a cool. It's a cool fact that I had the chance to watch some of the episodes, because when I started investigating for the interview, and I heard that you and Mark work on a show called how was it called?
Cheap
Laughs. And I had to see it. I had to watch it. And I looked for it, and it was there. It was.
And I'm going to watch it when after the interview. I'm going to watch it.
Okay. I apologize ahead of time, and I will say that you get what you pay for. They really are cheap laughs because they're free.
Mr. Carlin, here's a question, and we're gonna finish the interview. Jorge Lucas, an Argentinian artist that worked for DC, actually.
Mm-hmm.
He says he met you on San Diego Comic Con.
Oh, I hope
asks if you had some Action Comics 1, Superman 1 by Jerry Siegel.
No, I do not. If I had that, I would be so rich that I wouldn't even talk to people like you. I would never talk. No, I mean those are beyond my.
You would be with Nick Cage.
Yes, well, didn't he sell his, or it got stolen or something? I don't know what he did.
Yeah.
But hopefully it was insured. Now, what I do have is I have Superman number 75, the Death of Superman issue, signed by Gary Siegel. He did sign that for me, so that I have, and that's good.
What an amazing gift!
It's a good, well, yeah, it was definitely a great thing to get, I have to say.
Well, Mr. Carlin, we're gonna thank you for your time.
Thank you.
We loved another Easter egg that most people might not know is that you also, besides this cameo on Superman, I think it was 150.
Oh yeah. It was it was in this, and that was the one where Mr. Mixer's Pitalik comes to my office. Is that?
Yeah. That was when he died and you resurrect him.
Yes. Yes. This was for Man of Steel number 75, I think.
And now I remember a question that I wanted to ask you. That was, why the Great Carlini?
Yeah. it's a nickname that goes back to high school, believe it or not. I was studying animation, and I made a movie, and I put my name on the movie as if I was an Italian film director, Carlinini, and people started calling me the Great Carlini because it sounded like a movie maker or a magician, and it just stuck, and it just happened to follow me for the rest of my life. It's partly self-invented, but mostly perpetuated by other people. I don't really pretend to be great.
But you're great for us. You're great for us.
I'm grading, I think, more than anything.
I know. Now I remember another cameo that you have on comics. It's on Adventures of Superman. You are Mastermind.
Oh yeah, on the Batman comic, Batman Adventures.
Adventures.
Batman Adventures. Myself and Denny O'Neil and Archie Goodwin are three villains.
Mastermind, the Professor, and
Mr. Nice.
Mr. Nice guy.
Yeah, Mr. Nice is Archie, and that was because he was always nice. And Denny was a professorial type, and at that point, I was kind of like the ringleader of us as bosses at DC. So I was the mastermind of everything, and but we were not the greatest Batman villains of all time.
But they were the best issues because
they were fun issues. They definitely were fun, and they were fun they were fun to be in, and I always appreciate those issues, especially the one after Archie Goodwin died. They did an issue where his character says goodbye to me and the Professor, and that was very touching and important.
You know, I got this very present because recently here in Argentina it got published completely the whole run in Spanish. They published the whole run, and we got the chance to read for the first time the whole Batman Adventures run and the issues when Mastermind, Mr. Nice, and the Professor appears.
Well, I'm glad. I hope you feel like they were worth the money.
Yes, of course.
They're really worth it. Well, Mr. Carlin, thanks a lot for your time. We really feel honored to have you here.
Thanks for inviting me.
As I always say, it's a privilege. Yeah, it's a privilege to us and I hope someday we can meet in person here in Argentina or wherever you are.
Wherever I want. Well, okay, come out here to Burbank.
I
Burbank,
would love to.
We love to.
I'm not paying
you know, sir. You know, sir. As I always said to all the comic creators that we talk, that thank you because you are the real hero. The comic creators are the real heroes. Not Superman, not Batman, not Wonder Woman. Just you, sir. Because thanks to you, you did.
I love that you feel that way, but we really were just trying to pay our rent and mortgage and feed our families. And it really was a job. We just hopefully did a good job and made our jobs fun. And that came through. And that's why you have fun with it. So I don't think we're heroes. Real heroes save lives. We just make your lives a little better.
Well, we're gonna say goodbye in Spanish and end the show.
Sayonara.
Muchas gracias a todos. Muchas gracias a todos. Nada, gente. Mike Carlin.
Gracias.
Un placer tenerlo en Protagonistas del Cómic, tenerlo que es un protagonista más y tenerlo acá. Y ahí lo tenemos. Ahí lo tienen. Un genio.
Ahí lo tienen. Un genio.
Genius for us.
Genius. Thank you, sir.
Nos vemos en la próxima. Muchas gracias. Goodbye.
Bye bye.